Hey everyone, hope your day or night is going well. I'm going to jump straight into the topic today to try to be aware of time and see if I can make this more efficient as I go from topic to topic within this dialogue. The topic today is fear, the observation of it, the analysis of it, maybe some solutions towards it, and, certain feelings around it. But rather than get too far into the weeds of a specific description, I'm going to read a paragraph that a questioner gave or said rather to Jiddu Krishnamurti. The date is not available on this website, but what I'll do is read the paragraph that the person posed, and then I'll put the article in the comments where you could you could copy and paste it into your URL for websites, since Instagram won't do it for you. And yeah, I'll just kind of talk about some thoughts related to this topic on some things that this person said, which I feel like a lot of people might have. Make sure everything's good with the recording. All right. Here's what this questioner says. The topic is fear, and the subtopic is the urgency of change. Questioner. I used to party a lot, but now I am free of that lifestyle. Why am I so frightened of everything? I wake up in the morning paralyzed with fear. I can hardly move out of bed. I'm frightened of going outside, and I'm frightened of being inside. Suddenly, as I drive along, this fear comes upon me, and I spend a whole day sweating, nervous, apprehensive, and at the end of the day, I'm completely exhausted. Sometimes, though very rarely, in the company of a few intimate friends or at the house of my parents, I lose the fear. I feel quiet, happy, completely relaxed. As I came along in my car today, I was frightened of coming to see you, but as I came up the drive and walked to the door, I suddenly lost this fear. And now as I sit here in this nice quiet room, I feel so happy that I wonder what I was ever frightened of. Now I have no fear. I can smile and truthfully say, I'm very glad to see you, but I can't stay here forever. And I know that when I leave here, the cloud of fear will engulf me again. That is what I'm faced with. I've been to ever so many psychiatrists and analysts here and abroad, but they merely delve into my childhood memories, my memories of childhood, and I'm fed up with it because the fear hasn't gone at all. Okay. Like I said, I'll post the link to this article in the comments, and you'll have to copy and paste it, but you could go read the rest of it if you really like to. So there's a lot of things that the person said in this opening statement, about attachment to environment, people they are around for this sense of not having fear. You can obviously see that there's some small level of security that a person might claim that they need in order for the fear to not be there. This can especially be true if a person has grown to have super dependence on another family member, a friend, or a life partner in relationships. A person might say, the other person is the only reason life is worth living, kind of deal. And let me start by saying that I don't pretend to have an objective, factual, perfect, well-articulated solution to this dilemma that people face. I have faced it before. I know that it comes up every now and again because you realize that there are challenges you have to deal with in life that can seem very psychologically taxing. If you've had a sibling or a parent pass away, that can be or a child of your own, that can be a very, very difficult scenario to come to terms with. And every now and again, you just realize that grief comes up because of a memory you have, and you try to push it away, but it's interesting. The more you try to push something out of the mind, the more it comes right back at times. Not always, right? But sometimes it feels like you're trying to push it away and it just pushes harder to stay. I think, though, that the cognition that the fear is going on might be one of the first steps, if not the first step. You know, how do you feel? Why? And maybe not why that you know all of the reasons, because some of them might be subconscious. But do you know why the thoughts have come up? You know, can you identify the fact that you have spiral thinking? That oftentimes what happens is we start with an idea and then we spiral out of control down a rabbit hole where we started with a little bit of fear and a small challenge to deal with, remembering a loved one that's passed away and, you know, just like, oh man, I really miss them. I miss physically talking to them, which then spirals down to, you know, did we leave on good terms? Will I see them after this existence? Did they get to experience enough of life where they felt fulfilled? So many questions that a person could ask themselves. But notice how, at least in this scenario, many scenarios could be different about fear. At least in this scenario, your mind starts to spiral down. And when we say down, we're not talking literally about down or up. Maybe you could say that down is literally into negative territory. But the thing is that as soon as you put a identity on the given item, it's like you're giving more thought to it and more identification, which you can't, there are times where you can't outthink certain happenings, right? It's the equivalent of, like, if a person has clinical depression, there is a possibility that their thought patterns are not helping them. But don't you think the person would try to think better if it could get them out of it? There's a lot to be said there, but let's not talk about clinical depression and other challenges that people face in that regard. Let's just stick easily to this topic. Okay. You have a need for shelter, security, water, food, interactions with other human beings to a certain degree, entertainment, employment, right? At least most people do. The employment part, maybe you were born into a trust fund. But we have those needs, and not being able to secure those needs might be intimidating at some point. You know, someone has a fear of, you know, losing their place that they live and becoming shelterless because they've experienced it before, or because they continuously, you know, they lose this job ends, this job's not paying them enough, so they're constantly, like, you know, paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. And on top of that, they're sick and they can't afford a car. How much of a reality is that for many people, right? But again, let's stick with what the questioner was discussing, how, you know, time and space, like, they were really going into the fact that they were aware that at certain points they were happy and relaxed, and the universe was as it was. And then they got into other scenarios and they knew that the fear would return, the longing, if you will. Krishnamurti has some thoughts on this in the article you could read for sure. My mind observation and deep reflections in fear, trying not to identify too much, like I said earlier, because overthinking can be a fear in itself, right? Person's afraid of failure. They rarely try anything where they might be in a situation of embarrassment or failure, asking somebody out, a job that they think they're going to get rejected for. And yet, is most failure deadly? Not ideal, but it is the reality of the existence we live in. Most people experience failure at some point, maybe to various levels. And maybe more situations, admittedly, are higher stakes. So the failure or the failure of fear is more, you can feel it day in and day out, because, you know, having a place to live is a steady need we have. But what of the, you know, being afraid where you simply, if not holistically, at least enough of it are perpetuating thoughts by the fact that you are looking for identification. You are looking for the Holy Grail. You are looking for the silver bullet. You are looking for the answer, as if it would be a material thing manifested inside of myself. Not so much, obviously, as a material thing inside myself, although you could say it's part of your, you know, brain waves or whatnot, but more so like you literally have arrived at the meaning, the truth. Can you put that into words? The person says, what is the meaning of life? Maybe there isn't one. Maybe there is. But if my thoughts are dependent on a certain outcome always, then I'm subject to whether or not all of my life situations are of maximum pleasure, whatever they might be, a party, your wedding day, you know, reunion with people you haven't seen in a while, etc. Or, you know, the worst days of incidents that can vary for humans around the world, but that none, regardless, still affect us in our moods, feelings, security changing, right? If, for example, you lost your home and now you have to move somewhere else. I can see, though, part of where the questioner is struggling, because there is a certain sense of physical safety that we as material beings desire. I wonder if part of the perception, though, like I was saying before, is that we will find the point in life where that ceases to exist permanently. Does such a state exist? If it does, let's say that it does for a second. If it does, is it going to be in the form of material or of a literal answer that creates itself and is dependent on time, space, etc.? If that's true, then most or a majority of people in past history, hundreds of years ago, let's say, before the invention of modern technologies that have made life significantly easier for humans, you know, cars, appliances at home, etc. You would think that happiness would always be higher as time goes on throughout humanity. Contentment, not having the fears dissolving because they dissolve. Certain problems that used to be problems are no longer problems. We understand that modern medicine can, in some degree, help with disease and other things that come upon us. But if non-attachment to fear, or if the belief that the fear has disappeared and you have the perfect, mindset, is based on the time period, then you would think it would get better over the centuries. And yet we still have war today. We still have famine. We still have too much of humanity, I think, being unaware that our actions affect other people. And within ourselves, we may be unaware or be unwilling to admit that things like fear are to some degree manifested. Not that you wish for it. No. Maybe I'm using the wrong word of manifestation, but like the fear exists because we focus on it. Again, not all of them. The concern and the fear and depression you might have of losing your house because of job insecurity might be something, right? If you have a job interview coming up and you are very terrified of talking to people that you barely know, that you would have to give you a job that would approve you for it, that can be a fear that's very difficult to overcome. But in terms of the concept of fear, arising within us, like this person is saying that it did for different scenarios, I guess I would ask myself, where am I legitimately seeing things I should be concerned about? And where is the mind simply perpetuating cycles, getting lost? And why do we do those cycles? Why does our brain sometimes, and our whole being with feelings and such, are these reactions from 50,000 years ago from the plains of East Africa, as our species was dealing with a whole bunch of different issues, and at some point, I don't remember exactly when it was, but we branched out to other continents, and also some stayed there. Like, are these things that we as humans have had for the longest time within our DNA, and we're coming to realize that some of them are no longer problems? And so now our energy goes elsewhere. Do we, in being mortal, sentient, susceptible beings, do we lose ourselves, not just in thought, but in physiological reactions, which we have a very hard time grasping? And the initial reaction to control, and yet thinking about fear can breed more fear. It's not to say it's an absolute, as I said in the very beginning, but can I consider why that comes up? I love my friendships. I love my partner, my family. Used to not love people as much. Realized part of it was not being able to forgive myself and others on, just apathy of actions towards one another. It's not to say that it is the what feeling do I embrace, but when negative thoughts come up related to fear or others near that description, do I have the ability just to sit with them? Not I'm in the middle of the street and about to be run over by a bus. That's not this situation. Okay. Or you're in some type of relationship where there is some kind of emotional, physical assault or whatever else taking place. Get help, seek the proper authorities to get help. This is the general scenario that near the majority of people, I would argue, face, where somehow our being mistakes inconvenience and discomfort at times for things which could be allowed to feel and then start to dissipate. But instead, we turn a flame on a candle into an inferno. If there was a way to describe to get rid of fear, it might be the mind projecting more and more to where you're just trying to outthink it. And how many times have you experienced something where you said to yourself, if I could outthink this and stop thinking about it, it would be great. But for some reason, that's not always how our biology and all of us, everything that is part of us works. Sometimes it's possible, admittedly. Deep breaths, etc., right? But if we haven't considered that part of the sorry, one sec. There we go. If we haven't considered that part of the contribution we do is our own inability to recognize that not only are we the thinker of the thought, but there are many reasons why we give in to not being present, which then make the situation and how we feel about it exponentially worse. Right? Traffic sucks, we can admit. You might not have a fear about it, except that you're going to get to work late and you might be fired. Or on the opposite end, every day when you're driving super fast, there's the one person who just doesn't use their blinker and cuts people off and is right, all that kind of stuff. That might be a legit fear because you don't want to die in a car crash. But if I get road rage for either situation, now the situation has happened or is still happening in the driving sense or any other situation, and I've lost the ability for this to have soundness to make Informed, simple, confident steps, decisions, a direction. But for some people, they must always have an answer as well. I think that that's part of what the person is suffering from. Maybe not, because I haven't met them. But I think they're partially suffering from the fact that they demand to have an answer in a situation where, is there an answer? Do I attach my sense of well-being to circumstance? We already talked about shelter, food, and stuff like that. That's not this. This is comparison to others, right? It's the material aspect of our culture, of many cultures around the world, who, oh, cool, you got the newest car, whatever else it is. It's not to say you can't buy those things, but what contributes to our feelings of insecurity? I'll close right now because I realize I'm already at 30 minutes. What did I tell you? That sometimes these topics just need to be investigated. I find comfort personally in the fact that in the world of ideas, when you stop identifying and you just sit there like you're sitting in the vastness of space and you observe how certain thoughts will come up, where they come from, how they can spiral out of control, how they what things they are subject to, the cause and then the effect being the thought, right, and the feelings. And admittedly, not being perfect with all the things that happen on the outside and inside and how to deal with those, but being aware enough of it that little by little you can experiment with having different perspectives, naming the fear when it comes up and not suppressing it, because suppressing it is like suppressing a negative emotion. Will it beat you up? Very well could. And it's not a permanent solution, but the observance of it is enough for the person to slow down potentially in a new beginning, to see what is possible in all of consciousness. The same consciousness that created all figures you've ever heard of in literature, mythology, songs, movies, artistic expressions. That same infinite consciousness can offer me a place to slow down. And little by little, I can face more fears. And their power starts to dissipate. Okay, I'm at 31 minutes or so. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that there's a way on Instagram or YouTube. YouTube, I know for sure. Instagram, I hope there's a way where you can go through this faster if you want to. But I hope that this, brought you some peace. And as always, feel free to leave comments in the comment section as to other topics you might want to hear about. Take care.